Welcome to Share Talk, the only podcast where investors come first.
Hello and welcome to Share Talk. Today I'm joined by Olav Hellebo, who's CEO of ReNeuron. How are you today, Olav?
I'm great, thank you. How about you, Zach?
I'm doing fine. Could you just tell us about the latest news that you've had and how that's going?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a quick intro on the company. And so we work with cell therapy, and cell therapy has a potential to treat diseases that so far hasn't been addressed by conventional medicine, so it's advanced therapies. And we have one product that's in the clinic, so in clinical trials, and that's for a disease called retinitis pigmentosa. And that is a disease that will lead to total blindness. So obviously not a great diagnosis to get. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing there. And then we have two really exciting research platforms. One is exosomes, and one is something called induced pluripotent stem cells. So let me maybe start with the ophthalmology bit, because I think for an investor, that is the key. Patients with retinitis pigmentosa, there's quite a few of them, 150,000 in Europe, 100,000 in the US. So they have a gene defect that leads to blindness. It's typically inherited. So they typically have a blind uncle or something like that in the extended family. It sets in quite early, meaning late teens, early 20s. These people notice that in the beginning that they kind of lose night vision. Gradually kind of night vision goes, color vision goes, and then their normal vision starts to narrow. So they end up having more and more tunnel vision. So some of these can have perfect vision centrally, but absolutely no peripheral vision whatsoever. And then it is an inevitable decline in vision over years until they are completely blind. And there's no therapy available, unfortunately, for that, except for one therapy, which is called Luxturna, and that is for people who have one specific gene defect, which is maybe 1% of the patients that have that specific gene defect called RPE65. So in these patients, there is an opportunity. They are treated with this product, Luxturna, and it works very well. It is approved on NICE. It's launched in the US and internationally. It costs $850,000 per patient to treat two eyes, and that's actually NICE approved, 600-something thousand pounds. So you can see that even governments find this to be an indication where they want to help and are willing to invest in that. Therapies we're talking about here are once and done. You treat once and then that should have a very long-term efficacy. Now, so what we're doing is different than Luxturna. So Luxturna is treating a very small number of patients. What we're doing is we're treating the same patient population, but instead of trying to correct the gene defect, what we do is actually to restore the lost photoreceptors. So photoreceptors is obviously key for vision, and you're born with all the photoreceptors you will ever have. So the eye does not regenerate new ones, which is one of the few organs that doesn't actually regenerate. So if you lose your photoreceptors through, gene defects or disease, that's it. That vision is not going to come back, except with cell therapy. So that is the promise of cell therapy, is to treat these kind of diseases. So that's what we're doing. We're actually injecting progenitor cells, so retinal progenitor cells, into the back of the eye. We deposit these cells into a little bleb underneath the retina, and they will then integrate over time. And we've shown that in animal studies that these cells integrate into the retina and they connect to the optic nerve. So that means that you can restore the vision. It's not only talking about stopping the loss, but it's actually to turn the light back on again. So, this is very, very exciting opportunity to help these retinitis pigmentosa patients that have very little hope.
And I'm presuming that this kind of cell therapy can be used, let's say, across the body in other pathologies, other conditions.
Yeah, so there's a number of different cell therapies, and maybe the most commonly known ones are CAR-Ts, which are used to treat cancer. In the CAR-T space, it's what's called autologous. So that means you're taking cells from the patient and, manipulating them and then putting them back into the same person later on. It's a very expensive process and a very long process. And what we're doing here is actually what's called allogeneic or off-the-shelf therapy. So we use the same cell for all patients. Well, what we like to do is to use the right cell. So we like to use a cell that is already a retinal cell that is on the way to becoming a photoreceptors. We don't want to put a cell into the back of the eye that is not on that path or far down that path. Now, cell therapy, like you said, can be used, for many different cell types. And our research platform called iPSC, induced pluripotent stem cells, has the potential to create any cell, absolutely any cell. So we have kind of the width of opportunities here, and then we have the depth when it comes to the ReNeuron program.
And so could this be used in the sort of especially degenerative diseases? Is that something which is maybe the focus, or?
Yeah, so we focusing our ReNeuron program on inherited retinal diseases. We're starting with retinitis pigmentosa. It is a very large, it's orphan, but it's a large orphan, if that makes sense. It's kind of below the cutoff limit, but not far off it. And what's good about orphan disease is a couple of things. One is that regulatory authorities like orphan disease, they support you and push you ahead, and you get faster meetings, etc. It's also better in terms of pricing. Like I mentioned before, Luxturna is it's in the top 10 when it comes to the most costly drugs in the US, and very little pushback for what it delivers in an orphan area.
Okay, and just in terms of what investors can expect over the next, the rest of the year, next 6 to 12 months, what's on the ReNeuron sort of table at the moment?
Yeah, so on the ReNeuron program, we are in what's called a phase 2A study. So we are treating patients in the US currently, and we're about to open up a couple of sites in Europe as well. One of them will be Oxford University. Professor McLaren is joining that program. And he's one of the biggest names when it comes to back-of-the-eye therapies. He founded Nightstar, and Nightstar was sold to Biogen 2 years ago for $800 million. He knows what he's doing. It's great for us to have his expertise on board. We need to treat 9 patients more in this extension study that we've started. We treated 3 of them so far, so there's 6 more to go. And we'll do that in Q2. And then in Q3, we will update the market with 3-month data on the program. We've noticed from the current data that we have that after 3 months, you will get a pretty good impression of what the efficacy is going to be. And so far, we've delivered 8 to 10 letters in improvement in vision in the patients that we've treated. So if you kind of imagine the eye chart in your eye doctor's office, 10-letter improvement means 2 lines. So that's 2 extra lines that can be read with the treated eye compared to where they were when we started therapy. And that's significant, that's approvable. And that's in line with what we've seen with other therapies in other areas. The biggest product in ophthalmology is Eylea from ReNeuron. They have annual sales in excess of $5 billion, and that's for wet AMD, and this is an anti-VEGF, and they have 8 letters or so average improvement in vision in their clinical trials. So it's a different area, different product, but just to kind of give you the scale of what's possible and what it takes for approval.
Well, that sounds very encouraging. Olav Hellebo, CEO, ReNeuron, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Remember to visit our website for more news and other podcasts at www.share-talk.com.